All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a build refresh for Hydroid. We have a lot of new builds to talk about, given the new tools and toys we were given in December with the old piece update. And we started with Calervo, I suppose, before the new year hit, but let's talk about Hydroid as he uses a number of the new tools at our disposal. For that, we're, of course, going to talk about shards first, as we always do. Thankfully, you don't need any of these. All of these shards are totally optional, but they are pretty nice. First of all, these 3 red shards are all strength, so 45% additional power strength. This is really good because you double dip the effectiveness of strength from your 1 and your 3, because your 3's multiplier is also applied to your 1. So you do get a good amount of strength out of this. You can kill chaff more effectively with your 1, and also, of course, you get the higher bonus from plunder because you have more strength. Very nice, very not needed. As for our subsume, Gloom also appreciates higher strength, and with growing power applied, we get max Gloom if we really need it. But on this build, you really don't, as most of the time you are totally invulnerable. The yellow shards are 1 parkour, just because I like the speed increase, totally to taste, and 1 casting speed, which is actually probably the best shard in this build. Casting just a little bit faster, really on any Hydroid build, is just really, really nice. It's much more necessary on other like shield gating focused builds than this one, but is always going to be good in pretty much all cases, as Hydroid's casts are just a little on the slow side overall. With that, let's talk about the actual build. Obviously, we are on Gloom, but why are we on Gloom? We're on Gloom because this is a persistence build. Persistence, because it's new, and for those of you that don't know, this completely removes your shields, so no shield gating anymore. If your armor is above 700, you cannot be hit for more than 500 damage a second. Nullification and magnetic status and all that stuff turns this off temporarily. So, the things we focus on for this is there are a few things that can turn this off. Of course, magnetic status, which we're going to talk about the solution to that. It's a worm, spoiler alert. Getting ability nullified, just don't do that is the plan for that, as it usually is with the vast majority of Warframes. And then there's 2 other things that can effectively get rid of this. The first one is heat procs. Heat procs can remove half of your armor, so normally whenever I'm using persistence, I like to be over 1400 armor. Thankfully, Hydroid's 3 gives us 1600 armor, so we are well and above it with even a partial plunder buff. So we usually don't have to worry about nasty Jade Eximus or just Ignis wielding Grineer or such like that, turning off our persistence and just outright killing us. The vast majority of the time, as long as we sort of pay attention and keep plunder up, which we're always going to want to do anyway. So that's kind of out of the way, and we're not going to be under our armor threshold anytime soon, most assuredly. Now, this build, if you're looking at it, obviously looks real expensive. This says 7 up here. You'll be happy to know that, of course, this is wrong polarity. This build is a 4 Forma build, but 2 of those are Umbral Forma if you're only at 4 Forma. You can do this on sufficiently less Forma, and it's also worth noting because our 3 gives us so much armor, you actually don't need Umbral Fiber. So you can use an unranked Umbral Fiber, which is going to save you quite a lot of capacity right off the rip. Or you can just drop it all together. You don't need Viral Tempest. Viral Tempest is a really nice augment, and I really appreciate the viral status that it helps your 1 spread. And it makes your 1 much better at just killing chaff on its own without any help from you. But you really don't need Viral Tempest. You could totally cut this as well, and that's going to cut down the build a very large amount. Also, because we are normally just totally invincible in this build, getting knocked down doesn't super matter. So while it's nice to have Prime Sure-Footed, you really don't need it. The core of the build is really just this, and I've got 33 capacity left over at this point. You could put this together if you don't even have a reactor to your name, so you're probably going to be just fine getting this to a workable point. I will say, not starting above that 700 armor threshold does make things a little bit sketchy, but if this is like the totality of the build that you can put together, it's going to be more than fine if you really specifically want to play Hydroid. You don't even realistically need maxed vitality and intensify, or persistence for that matter. At lower levels, you're just going to be fine doing normal like Gloom stuff. But if you have Gloom, you really should probably work on getting these other tools at your disposal, at least like the unranked fiber and such. Maybe not the PSF or even the Viral Tempest. But this build is workable at much lower levels. But if you have the full thing put together, it certainly is a lot more convenient. We are also on Blessing. Blessing is, again, not actually necessary at all. But the extra 1200 health to get us up to that nice 2200 number means that we are going to have survivability of at least 4 seconds in pretty much all cases, which makes it so that you can just have more time to react, and it's a much more chill build where you can really be an invincible sea monster, basically. which works out really, really well. So with that invincible sea monster, what's the point of this? What's the point of this build? Why are we here? What are we doing with Hydroid? The thing that Hydroid excels at is that in this format, he's actually very similar to Saren without the need to garden as much as Saren is, in that you want to put Tempest Barrage kind of everywhere and let it spread corrosive with your special passive boosted corrosive to remove all the armor in an area. And also with Viral Tempest, put Viral on all those enemies, and any enemy who's like on the weak side just gets eliminated from that. Just right off the rip, they just don't exist anymore because Tempest Barrage is there. This works for about the first like 200 to 300 levels for your chaff enemies. So the vast majority of things, even in Steel Path, just get eliminated by this, outside of like heavies like gunners and such, who are, maybe you'll need to shoot once, which is not a big deal because you have Plunder. Plunder on this build after growing power is about a 500% corrosive damage boost, which is tremendous. A 500% elemental boost is, turns out, kind of a lot, especially whenever you can apply it to good weapons, which we're going to be going over a couple examples of. And Gloom giving us lifesteal with our Tempest Barrage being everywhere means that with Persistence, we're usually healing for more than 500 damage per second as long as we are, pressing buttons at any point. So we are completely invincible. We're constantly killing all the chaff enemies in the map, and anything that is kind of a threat a little bit, we just get to shoot for a bazillion damage with our massive damage boost, which is pretty nice. Similarly to Kalerva, we're going to talk weapons a little bit. I am on the Felarx. The Felarx is just great for builds that are like this. You get to take advantage of the new Bulwark. Once we are up to that 1500 armor point, this just has 500% damage written on it, which turns out is quite nice. Pretty much anything you point this at is just going to be eliminated right away. Of course, this is like going like very greedy, where like you can also like, set enemies up for savvy and all this other nonsense. A bunch of things that you don't need to do. If you want to know more about how like this Felarx build works and like why I'm running primed ammo stock, you can go check out my Incarnans videos that go over all of the most up-to-date builds for those weapons. But we are running some other stuff in here as well. One of them is just an Incarnan that we've all seen before. This is the Nami Solo. It's on theme for Hydroid, so it's what I'm on. It's a very good weapon. Nothing too surprising in here. That's also in the Incarnans showcase. But a weapon that I haven't talked about in a while is the Ocucore, which is a fantastic clear weapon, especially for high levels, for Hydroid specifically, because it just kind of does everything you want it to do instantly. It has that, once you're on that 500% damage bonus, and especially plus flare, you'll just have a tremendous amount of base damage here, plus the 500% elemental damage, meaning that just the raw damage of this weapon is pretty much going to eliminate anything, because you're adding corrosive to it that gives you an extra stack for galvanized shot, which is another tremendous damage buff that is really going to kill anything that moves. You're usually not even going to get to the point where you've built up statuses on most things until you're going to get to really, really high level enemies. So you can really just rely on this for kind of any group clearing that is giving you more than, the trouble that enemies need from your one. Notably, there isn't a Radiate build for this. It's the exact same build except for you run Irradiate. Most of the time on Hydroid, I will say that I was finding enemies don't get to 10 radiation stacks the vast majority of the time. They just die before then. But feel free to try this build out. Irradiate is definitely a cute little thing right now. But I definitely prefer Flare overall, just for the consistent, very high damage bonus that it can provide. Other than that, we do need a companion. Now, you don't have to run this, but it is really nice to hedge against those little magnetic procs that are lurking around behind corners. And this is a setup that doesn't run Guardian, which is, of course, as we are a shieldless Warframe, pretty good. We're on Synth Deconstruct. This is going to help us get better access to those health orbs for Blessing to build up. Not necessary, but definitely nice. And you could, of course, run different things in this slot. This is probably the flex slot of the whole build. Also, because we're on Gloom, which is a channeled ability, we can run Seismic Bond. This is just 30% ability efficiency for us to run. Because this is Worm, we are not only on Negate, which is going to prevent those status effects, as I was mentioning, we also get Calculated Redirection plus Reinforced Bond for a 60% fire rate. And because we are on, a kind of like weapons platform-focused build, that 60% fire rate is very, very nice for things like the Felarx, which can fire a little bit slowly otherwise. And of course, Manifold Bond to make sure Negate is always up. Notably, Manifold Bond is a little bit easier than it even normally is because our one spreads corrosive and viral, meaning you only need one other status to trigger Manifold Bond, so Negate is up pretty much 100% of the time. So just kind of a neat little package. The Verglass build is just the usual business for murdering enemies here. I will note that I am on thermite rounds. Thermite rounds and the 90 elemental mod, I kind of go back and forth between wanting 100% status and maybe not. It kind of depends on what you're running in general or what your desires are for your sentinel, but that's what we are on for worm. So that's all very, very helpful. Now, I am going to take the Verglass off because otherwise, well, worm will just kill the groups for me. But let's show this. So, notable things here about how this works. So whenever you use your 1, you, of course, get the rain. That's going to start spreading the statuses and do all the things that you want it to do, right? And you'll notice that it does not do a whole lot of damage. That is because you need to get your 3 multiplier, and that will not retroactively apply to your 1. So you want to make sure you get your 3 multiplier and then reuse your 1 so that you can get more damage. Also, there's no limit to the amount of your 1 that can be out. I have it on a scroll wheel so I can cast it real fast, and then you can really just saturate any environment you want with cannon fire, which does a very good job of killing just about anything, and anything that is giving you a little bit of trouble, pop the Felarks at it, whatever gun you want to shoot at it. Once you're over 400% elemental damage bonus, anything that you've built halfway decently is going to pretty much make whatever you look at explode into a million bits. And that's all very, very good. This is, of course, made much better by, having the enemy AI on and turning R4 on, because this is the state in which these enemies, of course, they're slowed and everything else, but they can't really do anything about this. If my 1 is on, I can't really take damage. As you can see here, I'm just kind of letting them do the do. I'm only going to recast my 1 as, a limited capacity as I want. Even with, a grenade like this, you can just sit in these. This would normally do my entire health pool. We can see it do that 500 and just instantaneously be healed to full. It's really not a problem. Anything that you do, of course, like just shooting enemies, whatever else, because you have Gloom up, will mean that you definitely are always healed. You're just functionally invincible. So this is the thing that I really wanted to point out and be very specific about, because you can remove Blessing from this build to make you, if you're going to be really consistent with your 1, you can get greedy and run like Molt Augmented and some such like that. But I just wanted to point out the possibilities with the build, depending on how consistent you want to be with your 1 and how much flexibility you want or how lazy you want to be running the build. Yeah, the benefits here are basically that you get super powerful weapons, and you're totally invincible, and you get to spread a bunch of statuses and kill a bunch of chaff enemies automatically, and just throw your 1 around and just, hang out in a rainstorm that ends with a bunch of dead bodies on the ground. And that's pretty much what's up. You also get to, keep your 2 and be fairly fast for it. Your 2 is not a particularly expensive ability, especially whenever an enemy shooting you is just going to fill you back up on energy whenever you kind of want. And that's very, very nice to come back to. You can, of course, keep your 4, and if you want to just loot farm, you can just swap out Viral Tempest for your looting ability on your 4. Though for that, there's kind of better ways to do that. I would usually just swap to Korra if that was your goal. But if you just want to do Pirate King shit, you can do that. Let's jump on into Tav and just kind of show how this build works normally, as it is pretty funny. All right, jumping into Tav. Sorry if it's been a while, YouTube. I know the videos have been quite sparse in the last, 3 or 4 months of last year due to the streamathon and such. But a lot of videos should be coming out rather quickly here. I'm planning on making a few of them today and getting, caught up on the various things. Also, things that are worth noting here, I am just on Zeneric. Your school doesn't really matter. You can kind of be on whatever you want. Just throw out Gloom, throw out your 1, and just let enemies fill you up with energy. It's usually not a problem. So Zeneric's not doing much here, if anything. It's also worth noting, because of this build being kind of weird, in situations like this where we have these 3 directions of enemies, right? You could actually consider leaving the direction that has the least enemy populace, leaving that direction totally don't even throw your 1 over there, and just putting it in the other directions to get tons of kills, because you can just get shot and not care. It just gives you infinite energy. So leaving an enemy around to shoot you and just battery you up is actually very real. That's just what I'm doing right now. So until there's enough enemies built up over there for me to actually want them to die and care, I really don't need to care. So now I'm full energy anyway, so I can just toss a bunch of casts over there. That'll wipe all those guys out, no problem. An enemy like an Xmas. Obviously, an Xmas is a more important enemy, so usually, bam, there you go, they're gone. With a weapon like the Felarks, Felarks, Kuvahak, Any kind of a big shotgun will usually do you just fine. Leech X-Miss are the ones, of course, that can be the problematic ones. Just because, like, they will survive most things, and also magnetic procs are a thing, but Worm is going to keep us quite healthy with that. Worm does also notably... Oh, I took his gun away, so he's not going to be helping us here. Normally, he's got the Verglass, and he'll be, like, you know, running around, killing enemies, and he gets the effect of Gloom as well, so he usually can keep himself healed from any kind of, like, minor toxin effects and such. Hope I'm not doing a good job of keeping my 3 up, which is going to affect my damage output. Not in a way that'll matter too much. It is worth noting that in terms of damage output, that is one of the places that this is, like, generally relatively weak. We can do 100 kpm with just your 1 and, like, hanging out and, like, not really using weapons. But in my testing, Hydroid's 1 just doesn't really scale to higher levels like a bunch of other Warframes things will. So, like, if you're looking to use this, like, you know, in the way that, like, Zaku gets to use their abilities and such, you're not really going to find success with that, unfortunately, as the abilities just literally, they don't scale more damage, and Hydroid, unfortunately, did not receive any kind of a damage bump whenever they redid armor. So whenever they made it so armor is no longer a 99% DR, unfortunately, we did not get, like, a 10x bonus for Hydroid's damage output. So he kind of does the pre-armor and health changes numbers to enemies that now have way more health. So even whenever they have full viral procs and no armor, he was designed with a different version of Warframe in mind, and like Zaku, did not get changes. So the damage output is just not going to be enough once you start getting to much higher levels, as it is static, which is unfortunate. But again, not a huge deal. You know, we're at like 300 kills at like 3 minutes here. So clearly it's not going to be bad for, like, the vast majority of levels that you're likely to play at, but it's certainly not going to be a thing that you're going to bring to, like, you know, level cap Cascade or something like that, and feel like you're going to do a whole lot with his actual abilities themselves for damage output, which is why I have focused more on this also being able to output damage with your weapons. Being able to just dump 4 million damage on just any random mook turns out to be pretty good for kind of anyone else that can show up. You'll notice whenever an Acolyte shows up that they're really not going to like it whenever I point this at them. They really do not appreciate that shit at all, and will just die. Obviously, because we have enough armor, we can just, you know, take the heat procs, but it's always good to avoid those whenever you can. And we really just get to be passively invincible. And that is part of, like, the point of this, is that we could, you know, do kind of like, you know, your classic kind of crackhead Hydroid build, where you're just casting constantly and refreshing your shield gate and yada yada and so on and so forth. But realistically, I think that this version, where I just get to do whatever I want with my weapons, really just frees you up to do kind of nonsensical stuff. And nowhere is that more prevalent, I think, than if we are looking at what this weapon is going to be doing with the Ocucore. The Ocucore is really crazy with this, especially whenever you are built up. Getting that, you know, 444% damage bonus as it stands right now, plus Gloom. Like, you don't even need to be casting your 1 whenever you're using this thing, because it is just going to shred through basically anything with your buff up. And of course, you're getting the lifesteal from the Gloom and everything else, so it's just pretty unnecessarily crazy. You can really just, like, stop using your 1 most of the time if you want to, and just throw it on your 1 whenever you need passive healing if you're going to be doing objectives and the like. So that is a big consideration for this build as well. Also, we just have angst here, not like violence or anything dangerous. So they will just simply die to being shot regularly. They are, of course, you know, a little bit resilient, but not too much. Not even needing to do anything specific. But also, like, you know, it's not like a absolute one tap. You know, if we cared, you know, enough about headshotting enemies every time, you know, just drop 10 mil on the Xmas or whatever. But it's not too big a deal. And we can kind of just, like, be in the rainstorm. We are, like, 5.5 minutes. We're at about 550 kills. So we are on that, like, 100 kpm train. This is a pretty good tile generation for this. I have, you know, run around a little bit lower, like 90 kpm sometimes with this. And, of course, you can go much higher if you really, like, oppress the enemies super hard with the Ocucore. They will not appreciate that, and they will die in bulk. But we don't, you know... I wanted to show what the Ocucore does with Hydroid, because it is kind of it's like a classic combination. It's been a thing where for a while there was like an AFK strategy that you could do with it. Though I think there are better ones now that, of course, I'm not going to show here, because that'll get you banned. So why would I show that? So that is like, you know, a bunch of the just good stuff that you're going to be able to accomplish. It's worth noting, kind of weirdly, this is a very weird thing about this, is you actually don't want to have your like melee out all the time and like be blocking, because it will lower the amount of energy generation that you get at most levels of play. So that is a thing that you maybe don't want to do, is you kind of want to block less and just take the damage, which is pretty funny. But it is weirdly the true factual thing that you do in fact want to engage in. But yeah, most of the time you're just going to need to be like, hey, I see there are some Eximus here. What if I shot a bullet at them? And that'll pretty much solve those guys and remove their auras and such from the different enemies and not be a big deal. And this is a weapon you could like really easily bring to like most EXAs, ETA, and EDAs. It is worth noting, and this is a thing that I'm sure has come up, but I just haven't noticed it because I haven't brought a Persistence Warframe in there for my weeklies lately. And that has been that if you do get your armor is lowered on abilities, yeah, you really should not bring a Persistence Warframe to those. Unfortunately, those types of modifiers on those missions do completely hose this type of build, so you'll want to bring something else for those. But luckily for Hydroid, you do have like more, I guess, classic builds at this point. Like the last one that I showed for him, that is going to be, just the older style, more like shield gating focused and such like that you could bring to those types of missions, because then you're not going to need the armor because you're just shield gating everything. So having the options open is nice, unlike for Warframes like Inaros and such, which of course you will be seeing some videos on. Inaros, weirdly, I know, is using the new health tanking arcane. Maybe I'll turn into the persistence guy. Maybe I'll be the guy who only builds persistence instead of it just being a new tool that is making some new builds. That'll be what I'm known for. It's gonna be really good. But yeah, that's like, there's not a whole lot. Like, it is a nice chill build. It utilizes the stuff that Hydroid is currently good at. You get to do like, your huge multipliers with your 3. You, of course, not that I've shown it super a lot here, but you get to like, use your 2 to be fast and just like run through tile sets that way. And just be quick, spread your statuses, kill the chaff enemies, do all the good stuff in that way, and just be, completely invincible while doing it, which certainly isn't bad. But you can see we are built up all the way up to our like 2200, which is expected for a mission of this length for sure. It would be, of course, much faster if I had given Worm his weapon back, because then we'd be getting that 25% chance on any weapon, or not weapon, enemy that Worm interacts with in order for there to be another health orb involved. But not too big of a deal regardless. I also have been, like, this is a thing that you don't need to do, and you can swap this out. I've been neglecting to just, like, make sure that I have, like, growing power on. So that is a thing. Also, your 3 is line of sight, which is what just happened there. But yeah, so you can go up to 495, which is what you're usually at. But it's not actually super, super important, especially until you're getting into, like, higher levels. Great thing here, we can show off the Jade Eximus just can't kill you. So that's kind of a nice one, to be able to hang out in just the gym beam over here and just blow those enemies away whenever you feel like it. Now, it is worth noting, if your 3 buff does run out, like it's about to whenever violence drops in here. There we are. Then you will need to not be under the effect of a heat proc whenever your 3 ends. In order for you to not just like instantly die inside of a Jade Beam. So make sure your 3 is not going to turn off while you are just like mean mugging inside of a Jade Beam. Otherwise, you will super die. So that is a consideration. I definitely have made that mistake while aura farming. But the mistakes we make while aura farming are many. But yeah, 10 minutes there. We're just over 1,000 kills. Obviously, I did do a little bit of Aki coring there, and it's 90 to 100 KPM, which is nice and respectable, especially for how just absolutely maxed out chillin' this build is. It is like a very passively applicable, like, if you are here on Hydroid because he looks real cool and this skin is great, and I honestly can't blame you, this will make sure that you have a thing to be doing in the vast majority of content, as it is just like really fantastic passive survivability backed up by solid abilities that are good damage buffs that you can use for the vast majority of content. Yeah, it's pretty good stuff. I'm quite happy with it. But yeah, how's everybody feeling about persistence? I think it's an interesting addition to the game. that does go the way of giving us attenuation, which is an interesting one. Kind of turned many players into what attenuated Leech Eximus were doing to us, which is an interesting taste of their own medicine for the enemies. But yeah, good stuff. I'll see you tomorrow. All right, a new year is here, and we actually have some new patrons to thank. Thank you very, very much all for supporting the channel, especially the $10 patrons: Athean, Eighth, Alex Parnham, Arbiter Daydream, Baby Hoot, Barkus, Inuvan, Blotomatic, Brutus Salazar, Cano Lathra, Clob World 3, Dylan Dworsky, Ithrain, James Harthorn, JC4 Science, Josh, Nightcar 1981, Lord Ian, Luzanth, Matt Holt, Mike Kiesman, Mikkel, Michta, Nerve, One Man Wolf Pack, Ruby, S267, Sanyu, Season, Sharp247, Snap the Mag, The Coupon of Death, Waifu Wars, Wodet01, Seraphir, and Zero Weaves Plan. Thank you all very much. And of course, thank you to all of my $5 and $2 patrons as well. Your support is much appreciated. We should be getting a ton of new build stuff out because there is a lot of new things that came out in December and many things to test and figure out.